I'm often really very amazed by the character of Saint Paul. The most zealous of all the apostles, as he at one time presents himself. And this came to mind for me reading the second reading from this Sunday's readings. You have this character, Saint Paul, who, as he says in the reading, he goes around and presented the gospel free of charge. Right? We know that Paul would work with his hands when he was in a new city preaching the gospel, founding a local church as a tent maker, and then in his free time, essentially preach the gospel. Particularly so that people understood that he wasn't a kind of profiteering prophet. He was really capable of sustaining himself, but then presenting the gospel free of charge so that people recognized the sincerity behind it. And I'd say obviously there's a great deal to reflect on in all of this, certainly for the clergy, for us, and for all who are really engaged in working with the church at an institutional level. That there needs to be this fundamental evangelical zeal, whatever mission we serve. This fundamental dedication to the gospel above all things. But then really there's also quite a bit to reflect on for any Christian, because the preaching of the gospel has not been entrusted only to the clergy, to the religious, and to people who work at the institutional level in the church. The preaching of the gospel has been entrusted to the whole church, and really all of us as Catholics, wherever we are, whatever our circumstances, as members of the body of Christ, we're called to continue the mission of Christ and to bring the presence of Christ into those circumstances, in a particular way, often through preaching the gospel. And we have a great deal to learn from St. Paul in all of this. Proclaiming the gospel boldly, courageously, charitably, always, but doing so even where it costs us, even dearly or personally. But we can also really take our cue from St. Paul in recognizing that the preaching of the gospel is not simply a matter of soapboxing. And he speaks to this in the second half of the reading. He says, "To the weak, I became weak so that I might I might win the weak. And then I became all things to all men so that I might by all means save some." Right? He really presented the gospel. He always tried to present the gospel, of course, with great credibility, which is why he worked with his own hands, but then also in a way that the people to whom he was preaching the gospel would be able to receive it effectively. You see a little kind of hints of this in when he preaches in Athens, and he tries to speak to the Athenian people about their religiousness and about their devotion to an unknown God, even who he then declares to them as known in Jesus Christ. But for all of us, really, we have to kind of have this same sense of dedication. On the one hand, presenting the gospel as authentically as possible, which very often for us means living an integral Christian life, striving for holiness, being kind and respectful to the people around us, good citizens, good people, good workers, and so on. But then also, of course, becoming all things to all men, preaching the gospel as we think it might be well received. Perhaps to some emphasizing the truths of the faith, to some emphasizing the goodness of God, the goodness of Christ and the saints, to others the beauty of the church's liturgical traditions, perhaps, or art. Whatever it is really that will speak to a person at a level that they appreciate, because ultimately we are confident that the gospel is the answer to every essential human desire, really. And so we present the gospel as best we are able, in keeping with our gifts and our abilities, in keeping with the place in which God has put us, the graces that he's given us, the talents he's given us, really spending all of these things in whatever means we are able for the sake of the preaching of the gospel. As St. Paul said, becoming all things to all men, insofar as we are able, so that we might by all means save some.